Hey everyone, I'm Lady Sylvine and welcome to my realm of purpose. Today we are going to be talking about Rook. We'll be going over the 6 factions and what that means for your Rook and their backstory going into Veilguard. These factions are the Veil Jumpers, the Mourn Watch, the Antivan Crows, the Lords of Fortune, the Grey Wardens, and the Shadow Dragons. Each of your companions in the game stand as a representative of one of these factions. Balara Lutari is a Veil Jumper, Emmerich Volcarin is a Mourn Watcher, Lucanus de la Morte is an Antivan Crow, Tash is a Lord of Fortune, Davrin is a Grey Warden, Nev Gallus is a Shadow Dragon, and Lace Harding is the exception. She is a Scout of the Inquisition, which was established in the previous game. These 7 will give you insight into each of the factions when you play, as well as embody the overall spirit of the people that they represent. Plus you can have unique dialogue with them if you happen to be a member of their faction. Your Rook is a relatively new member of their given faction, who's in one way or another followed their instincts and as a result gotten themselves into a bit of bother as a member of their organisation. They have agreed to work with Varric to get away from whatever trouble they were previously in, and prove themselves once more as a valuable member of that faction. Now, let's go into detail about each of these factions to give you a rough idea of where you sit with your Rook. 1. The Veil Jumpers. The Hunters of Secrets. This daring group explores ancient elven ruins in the Arlathan Forest. Although founded by elves, they welcome anyone brave enough to face Arlathan's reality-warping magic. The Veil Jumpers' goal is to uncover ancient elven lore and artifacts, as well as research the unusual activity within the Arlathan Forest, which has a habit of defying the laws of physical reality, similar to that of the Fade, the realm of dreams, unlike pretty much everywhere else in Fadus which obeys the laws of physics. One would assume that the odd nature of the forest has been exacerbated by the events of Inquisition, as well as Solus's more recent plans, in which the Veil has been drastically weakened, and the crossing between waking and dreaming worlds has become far more easy to pass through where the Veil is already thin. If you choose this faction, your Rook will have the surname Aldweir. Aldweir's backstory involves them being sent on an expedition into the Arlathan Forest, where they, and a small team, were tasked with recovering a lost map that led to a hidden area within the forest. Aldweir lost the map when they returned to save their fellow Veil Jumpers who had been trapped and left behind, as trouble arose. Aldweir starts the Veilguard on poor terms with some of their faction's leaders because of the loss of this invaluable map. In choosing this faction, your Rook is most likely adventurous, daring, and always ready to take notes. They also probably have an unquenchable thirst for elven lore. 2. The Mourn Watch. Defenders of the Dead. This elite necromantic order explores the mysteries of life and death, and tends to the undead in Navarra's sprawling grand necropolis. The Mourn Watch are an order under the Navarran Mortalitasi, or Death Mages in layman's terms. Unlike most of Fadus that uses funeral pyres to send off their dead, Navarrans practice burial rites, and the Mortalitasi actively invite spirits to inhabit the remains of those who have passed away, believing them to be the remnants of the soul that is departed. The undead are allowed to wander the Grand Necropolis, the city of the dead, freely, under the protection and guard of the Mourn Watch. In spite of the Mourn Watch existing as an order under the Death Mages of Navarra, one needn't be a mage to be a Mourn Watcher, only capable of performing one's duties as a defender of both living and dead. If you choose this faction, your Rook will have the surname Ingilvar. Ingilvar's backstory involves them being found in a tomb of the Grand Necropolis by the undead as an infant. With unknown parents, they were raised by the Mourn Watch before joining the Order themselves later in life. When undead nobles began a civil war in the Grand Necropolis, Ingilvar was instrumental in quelling that war, ending the undead nobles, and saving lives as a result. Ingilvar starts the Veilguard on poor terms with some of the faction's leaders. Having destroyed some of the honourable dead, they were tasked with defending. Ingilvar was encouraged to travel for a time until this incident blew over. In choosing this faction, your Rook is most likely philosophical, decisive, and comfortable around the topic of death. They are also probably one of the most unhinged people you could ever meet. 3. The Antivan Crows. Assassin extraordinaires. Swift knives in the dark, the Crows are ruthless assassins, both respected and feared as Antiva's shadow protectors. The kingdom of Antiva, unlike other nations in Vadis, is known best for its trade and diplomacy rather than its standing army. But that isn't usually a problem, as they have the House of Crows, an elite league of assassins that are renowned across Vadis. They are led by 8 talons, 8 houses with the names Arenae, Cantori, Nero, Deriva, Cortez, Velisti, Balazar, and at the very top, Della Morte. Most of the Crows were taken in as orphans, or purchased as slaves, taking on the surname of one of these 8 talons once they joined the order. While there are many benefits to being one of the Crows, the training is brutal and not many survive to become full-fledged member. Even then, as a full member, failing to fulfill a contract results in that Crow's death, as failure is seen as weakness, as well as bad for business. Despite the Crows' blood-soaked, sterling reputation, their homeland is not doing too great currently, as Antiva is partially occupied by Qun forces, the Antam specifically, as well as several of their leading members having been murdered relatively recently. They work now in the shadows against the Antam, as well as fulfilling their usual contracts. If you choose this faction, your Rook will have the surname Deriva. Deriva's backstory involves them recently being promoted to full member among the Crows, and is already stirring up trouble. In spite of caution in the higher ranks, Deriva intercepted a patrol of Antam herding captives. While they saved lives for now, they unknowingly compromised a larger operation organised by the Crows. Deriva starts the Veilguard on poor terms with their faction's leaders, having ruffled the feathers of their betters. They now look for a new way to prove themselves to the House of Crows. In choosing this faction, your Rook is most likely intense, eager to act, and prove themselves. They also very likely laugh in the face of danger. Mwahahaha. 4. The Lords of Fortune. Seekers of gold and glory. An informal collection of explorers, hunters, and treasure seekers from Ravane. These rowdy lords are famed for both daring exploits and narrow escapes. The Lords of Fortune are a guild of treasure hunters, both for hire to those unwilling to get their hands dirty, as well as for personal ambitions. Being a guild from Ravane, a nation with a variety of differing cultures, religions, and styles of governance, they accept people from all walks of life, regardless of race or abilities. So long as you can get the job done, you'll get paid and reap the rewards. Unfortunately, there really isn't that much more to it. This is a rather new faction to the lore of Dragon Age. Picture in your mind hunting through some ancient ruins for some rare object, grand heists and piracy. All for profit and glory. And you have the gist. If you choose this faction, your Rook will have the surname Ladier. Ladier's backstory involves them participating in an expedition into some ruins. After being double-crossed by a corrupt Ravani noble, Ladier killed them and escaped the ruins, saving the lives of the rest of the expedition and preventing a dangerous artifact being found, but forfeiting the treasure, and most likely the payment for the job. Ladier starts the Veilguard on poor terms with the other Lords of Fortune, as well as the nobles of Ravane. The success of the Lords relies on the Ravani forces looking the other way, so Ladier has deemed it best to leave Ravane for the time being. In choosing this faction, your Rook is most likely perceptive, brave, and has good instincts. They're also very likely a loot goblin with their eyes on the horizon. 5. The Grey Wardens. Shields against the night. An ancient military order sworn to battle Darkspawn and other monsters. The Wardens undergo secret, unbreakable rites that grant them supernatural powers against the dark. The Grey Wardens are an ancient order dedicated to combating the Blight, Darkspawn, and Archdemons. They take the Blight into themselves, becoming corrupted through the ritual known as the Joining. Thereafter, they can sense Darkspawn, and resist the debilitating and lethal effects of the Blight, though not everyone survives this secret ritual, and all Grey Wardens succumb to the Taint, sooner or later. The Wardens also accept those from every walk of life, regardless of race or abilities. The moment you become a recruit, your past, crimes, and affiliations are abandoned. You become one of the most honourable warriors in Vadis. For this reason, many Wardens are in fact former criminals, as well as elves, who across Thedas are typically treated as second-class citizens. If you choose this faction, your Rook will have the surname Thorn. Thorn's backstory involves them being ordered to hold the line during a Darkspawn incursion, whilst awaiting reinforcements. Defying those orders, Thorn led a squad into battle, sealing a tunnel into the deep roads where the Darkspawn were coming from, and saving villagers who were under attack. Thorn starts the Veilguard on poor terms with the higher-ranking Wardens, and those with connections to noble families. They chose to leave on other business while tempers cooled. In choosing this faction, your Rook is most likely bold, rebellious, and hands-on. They're also accustomed to losing people. 6. The Shadow Dragons. Breakers of Bonds. An underground resistance that opposes the rulers and slavery in Tevinter. Coming from all walks of life, they are determined to bring justice to the people. The Tevinter Imperium is the oldest human civilization, with a rich culture and history. It is also the heart of the slave trade in Thedas, both for chattel slavery as well as indentured servitude. They also have a strict political and religious system that promotes mages as the superior beings in Thedas. Of course, besides the slavery and classism, the Imperium is also renowned for the practice of blood magic and human sacrifice. For the sake of power, political gain, and others, such as extremist groups like the Venatori, hope to bring about world change through tapping into the prospect of godhood itself, which is kind of possible. It's a mess, quite frankly, and the Shadow Dragons are working to fix that. The Shadow Dragons are a resistance movement operating in Tevinter, working towards the abolishment of slavery, as well as setting a course for dismantling the stark hierarchy between mage elites and non-mages, all in the hope of making Tevinter a better and safer place to live. This is not an easy task, as the Empire has had its traditions and mentalities for over 1,000 years. If you choose this faction, your Rook will have the surname Merkur. Merkur's background involves them being adopted into a military family before joining the Shadow Dragons. They were escorting a dignitary who was investigating a slavery ring, when their instincts told them it would go sour. Merkur safely snuck the dignitary, as well as rescued slaves through Venatori-controlled zones. The Venatori, of course, learned of their actions, and the Shadow Dragons decided it best Merkur keep their head down for a while. In choosing this faction, your Rook is likely ethical, optimistic, and strategic. They're also probably galaxy braining the hell out of all their choices, all the way down to what brand of tea they drink. And that's all I have on the factions and backstories for your Rook before release. Hopefully that gives you a better understanding of the choice, and a little idea of how you want to play your Rook in the game. Personally, my favourite of the 6 factions has to be the Mourn Watch and Ingilvar, but I'm going to be playing as Aldweir, the Veiljumper, because it fits with the character I want to play in my first playthrough better. But second playthrough, I'm definitely going Mourn Watch, it sounds so cool. The one personally I find the least interesting is actually the Lord of Fortune, but I'm just not into heist movies. I think that's probably it. So yeah, let me know in the comments what faction you guys plan on playing as for your first playthrough, maybe your second playthrough. Do you have your favourite? Least favourite? Let me know, I'm super curious. That's all I've got for today guys, thank you so much for watching, have a great day.